Well, good evening, folks. Dave Jorgensen here once again with the Super Affiliate Network. And I was sharing with you yesterday about the first time that I went back to school. The things that, we have to have our minds set. There's such a thing as mind set, mind over matter. You've heard it. But I could not get out of my head, that I was called to the ministry. And I knew I had played Jonah and ran. And like I mentioned last night, the boat sank that Jonah jumped on. Well, then, when that ship sank, I got me a job in the hauling chips that spring. That winter, I cut and hauled over 40 cords of firewood just for money to supplement to get by with for the winter. And that is, let me tell you, that is a hard way to make a few bucks. I forget what I was getting, but anyway, I was basically paying my gas money to go into the unemployment center every so often, and because we lived way out in the mountains. I mean, it was like 2 hours or 3 hours to town. Anyway, it was like long ways, couple hours anyway. It's been so long since I traveled back and forth there, but to the main town, Eureka, there where we did our shopping, it was a ways. Or unless we wanted to, during the good weather, go over the mountain, we could go to Grants Pass or Medford. But anyway, I went to work hauling chips. Oh, that was a wonderful job, man. You could go there all nice and dressed, a sports shirt and your jeans and your boots, and you might get a little sweaty and dusty maybe when you're loading the chips. But then the rest of the day, you're driving up to the coast. We were hauling, we were going up and picking up a load from Arcata area and bringing them back. We went to Medford and got them. Well, I only worked there a month or so, rented a house and everything, and then they said, well, we're moving to Medford. All of you, the last 20 drivers are going to Medford because they had a day driver and a night driver. So there were, 2 drivers for each truck. Well, for a long time, the mill was going real slow, and it was just, I was a day driver and I was driving at night because by the time I got my load to take, and it was a 24-hour shift there where they dumped them in Samoa. And so anyway, I was hauling chips there. I did that for about a year. Loved it. It was a nice job, air-conditioned cab. They were almost brand new Western Stars, brand new 45-foot trailers. And we used to drive. Well, we used to really go down through the redwoods and stuff. And one night, they've been telling us, slow down. And one night, I was slowed down and I was going, and all of a sudden I got a kink and I had to go, and I sped up and I came up on this car, and this was along the Smith River. If any of you are familiar with the Smith River, not too many places to pass along there except for the 4 lanes. But this was right along the Smith River, and it was a big, wide, sweeping corner, and you could look and see if anybody was coming. So I held, for some reason, I just had to get by this guy, where a few minutes before I didn't care. And so I came up behind him, and as soon as I could see that it was clear, I started zipping around him. It's a big, long, sweeping corner, and I'm on the long lane. We're heading north, and I'm, it took me longer to get around him than I expected, and I kind of wondered what he thought, Next morning, I found out what he thought. He was a retired attorney, and his wife was driving, and they claimed I run them off the road, but then they admitted that I didn't really run her off the road. She just panicked and got off on the edge of the road. And anyway, so basically the boss told me, he says, we're going to have to use you for an example. Otherwise nobody's going to listen and slow down. Plus that, they had threatened if they didn't do something to me that they were going to sue them. There are people out there are crazy. You got to watch what you do. But anyway, well, now what do? I don't have a job. I had a beautiful job. I loved it. Had benefits. Anyway, so and I got along with the boss really well too. But it was beyond his control. He felt really bad. In fact, I almost got back on there. They were considering hiring another driver a year or so later, and I got the job if they decided, but then they decided to hire the job out to a private truck instead of at a truck. So I didn't get the job, but so I'm out of, first thing I'm thinking, you might as well go back to school. You shouldn't have ran anyway. So we headed up the coast to Fortuna, where we grew up. Kind of camped at my folks for a while, and then rented a duplex there. And my wife was working for some rich people. She'd spend the night at this lady's house and get paid for it, sleeping most of the time. And the lady really liked her. And so anyway, one of the doctors there, dentist there in Fortuna, him and another church member there had I think they each had 40 acres or 20 acres. I can't remember. I think it was 40 apiece, way out in the mountains, and way out beyond Bridgeville. If you're familiar with that area, it goes over from the coast and it comes out in the Red Bluff area. So anyway, he hired me. They wanted to put a fence around their property. And this guy had a little caterpillar-like thing. The one fellow was a friend, actually a distant relative. And it would tamp the posts. It would pound the posts in the ground. So we, were stringing wire and around the place and driving those. But sometimes there'd be rocks in there, and you couldn't get them past the rock. You'd have to move it a little bit or something. But anyway, usually the rock was usually small enough that it broke finally. And so that other fellow and I worked there all week long, and then we'd come back in on the weekends. And the guy just put my money, the money I made, he just put on my, on my college bill. And anyway, then we got down to the college, and my wife got a job being staff again. This time she didn't work as a cook, but they had a little fast food things down in their little mall there, and she run that. Supervisor, had college students working for her. But they told me when because I wasn't going to have to borrow any money, but they said, if you take out this grant, then you're eligible for this much money. Or so much money. And back, this was in 82, 83 school year. And I was going to come out with all the money from, the half of my tuition, and the money I would get from taking out the grant that I didn't spend. Well, I actually invested. I was going to build an old car with the money so that I could have money to pay it back with when I was done. I loved old cars. I had a 53 Chevy and was going to do some work on it in the summer times and put a V8 in it. Anyway, so once again, here I had every quarter, there's 3 quarters, I had $400 and some cash above my expenses. And this time I worked in the boiler room. That was my first computer experience back in '82, entering the readings from the boilers and stuff into the database on the computer. It was an interesting job. I worked a lot of night stuff where I could just study while I was working. So that worked out really well. Well, I went clear through the school year that year. I did go up and work for somebody. I forget who it was this time, but I did some work in the spring. And I finished up the school year. But my wife, the last month or so, she could not work. She got sick, and she was coughing. She would cough until she was about ready to die. So we left our stuff at the house. I was offered a job driving dump truck with union wages for the summer, which was just fantastic. We got up there. We were staying in our folks' little cabin where we'd lived before. And the job fell through. It didn't come through. So we're spending a lot of time swimming in the Salmon River there and just doing a lot of things. And my wife's health gradually got better. And anyway, so finally we decided, well, we really can't afford to go back to school this year. Give Mama a chance to heal up a little better. And I went to work, and that's when I jumped on another ship. That fall, my brother-in-law called me from Alaska, and my younger brother and I went up there and worked. We worked and made some money that fall, and then we came back down in December, and we're supposed to be back up there the 1st of March. And that's another story in itself, that trip up there. But anyway, to make a long story short, that ship sunk too. And that's why it was from '83 until '91 that I finally got back to school. But that, the job fell through up there, and both times my job fell through and the ship sunk, my money sunk with it too that I had coming. That's extra hard. Losing your job and your job going down the tube is one thing, but losing about $4,000 each time when you live from paycheck to paycheck, it's not good. I'll continue the story tomorrow night. But sometimes if you're destined to go a certain route, and that is the plans that, I don't know if you're religious or not, I am. And he keeps after you. And I didn't, for me, getting through school was not the easiest thing, because my concentration, they would have had me on Ritalin and everything else as a kid growing up if they had it back then. But anyway, you can do what you decide to do. I found out you can do it even when you can't afford to do it. I couldn't afford to go back to school. And every time I did, in the last time I went back to school, my little brother went with me. He became a pastor too, in the 90s. And so, it was kind of interesting. But so we were in school together. Anyway, take a look. I am so happy I found the Super Affiliate Network, and I am not even in the least bit sorry that I'm not doing it. I mean, that I have joined it. Right now, I'm stalling out on a tech issue. Once that's solved, I'll be going again. But anyway, once again, 15 minutes. I'm so sorry, people. I gab on here, but I hope you got some value out of it, because things just work out. They have a way of falling into place when you do what you know you should be doing, and you know you're going to better yourself. Click the link below and check it out if you get a chance. It's always going to be there, but every day you wait, you're 2 days behind. Bye.